Hey, we'd just like to put a shout out to our supporters like Brilliant Beam Media, the great Sia. If you're looking for a producer for your podcast, she's amazing. Or the Hounds of Business Happy Hour, Mike Afterburner. He's amazing. He knows his way around LinkedIn. He can help out your business or your LinkedIn profile to reach higher heights. Or an OG. She's been around with us, Soaring Profits Forever, 1,000 Trees, Lisa Browning. If you're looking for a publisher or someone to help you write from the beginning, she's your woman. And Purple Tongue Hot Sauce. If you're looking for some great sauce, let me tell you, this is it. Check them out. And if you do, please tell them that Soaring Profits sent you. And we are live. Soaring Profits Thursday night live. We have the great and wonderful pleasure of talking to a wonderful man like we always do. We have wonderful guests on that are changing the world, and Dr. Bryan Sagray is no different. Patrick, why don't you tell us a little bit about who Dr. Bryan Sagray is?
Well, Dr. Sagray, it's a pleasure to have you here tonight, pal. We got a little bit of the behind the scenes before we got started, talked about a few things, and really looking forward to this one. We've been wanting to have you for a while, and thank you again for joining us. But Dr. Sagray is a performance coach for your brain. And obviously, a couple of Canucks like us, we could probably use a little help in that area. He's already given a shit about our caffeine intake and some of the talks we've had before, and he's making sure that we're getting good sleep. But Bryan, what else do you do? Who are you? What are you? And why are you doing what you're doing, pal?
Cool. Yeah, thanks for having me on, you guys. I really appreciate it. So I am, like you said, Bryan, performance coach. I'm from San Antonio, Texas originally. That's where I'm coming to you guys from tonight. I've been a jack of all trades, I guess you could say. I was a surgeon for a while. I was a professional athlete. I ran my family's 50-year-old plumbing company for 3 years, and we sold that. And somehow I found my way into this. And really what I'm doing now, honestly, is I think most coaches, your ideal client is a past version of yourself or some sort of a current version that you're still working on. So what I'm doing right now is through this whole journey that I've been through, obviously there's been a lot of mental health, burnout, struggle, and difficulties in my life. And so what I do now is help high achievers sort of overcome or sort of hopefully avoid and skip, some of the obstacles that I had to deal with. And yeah, that's where I am, and that's what I do.
So are you referring to like a high energy person, like someone in sports, someone who's management, someone who has a business, but just pushes themselves to the limit and doesn't think about taking a break, doesn't think that their body needs rest, and so they burn out more quickly? How do you help them with that?
Yeah, so I think it's probably everyone you mentioned. I like to tell people it's sort of, the people on the outside that look like they've got it all figured out is sort of like the duck on the pond, right? Where it looks good on the surface and underneath it's total trash. And so I think a lot of people, So I think a lot of people that are at the very peak of where they are, that is actually what is really going on. And so it's kind of like I've been there, you're chasing all these external things that you think are going to bring you happiness. You're constantly burned out. Your relationships with your family and your wife maybe aren't as good. You've kind of written your friends off. And so it's about helping people get time back, build deeper relationships, make more money. Had a guy that I helped get over a 17-year gambling addiction. I mean, it could be a whole bunch of stuff. So really, it's just anyone that is either stuck or has these sort of limiting beliefs where they think they just can't do something, and I help kind of push them.
So when you mentioned that, sorry, man, you mentioned that you often, when you're a coach, you find the people that you're most like and coach them. So you just mentioned high energy, burnout, losing your friends, family. Can you go back into your story a little bit and tell us about what led you? Because obviously there's been some turmoil in your life that has led you to this place, if you identify with the people you're helping.
Oh, yeah. I mean, geez, just pick one. I think for me, it's probably, when I got out of undergrad and pursued what I thought was going to be like a lifelong career of endurance sports and running, was this constant where I started into this for the love of the sport. And then it quickly turned, not quickly, but it took a few decades, but it turned into, not running for me anymore, running for a sponsorship, running for someone else, right? Running to make a paycheck. and I sort of lost my, I guess, purpose as to why I was doing what I was doing. And it was because I was kind of being told what to do. And I sort of lost the passion for that. And so that was when I made my first big pivot and went back to finish out my medical, training. And then the medical field, the healthcare field is, as a surgeon, it's a type A type person that they groom. It's, 115 plus hours a week for, years on end. I mean, I tell people the old surgeon joke is that we have the best relationships with our wives ever, because when I wake up in the morning, she's asleep. When I come home at night, she's asleep. She could dye her hair, paint her fingernails. I mean, it could be her sister. I have no idea what's going on, right? And so it's this constant day after day, week after week. And I think what happens is we tell ourselves, okay, first it's residency, then it's fellowship, then it's board certification, then I'm going to be a professor, then I'm going to be the residency director. And you always think that the next hill is going to be where it smooths out. And then you get up to the top of the hill and you realize, oh, great, there's another one and there's another one, right? And so during this whole time, everything that I do is to serve other people, which is great. But I found out very quick that if you don't take care of yourself first, then there's only so long you can do that before it all comes crumbling down. And I think for me, where it really got sort of real is when I sort of figured out that I'm doing this race, right? I'm not running my own race. I'm not running at my own pace. And then right at that moment when I realized that, my dad lost his second fight to lung cancer. And that was really what sent me down a tailspin, because him and my mom, who were high school sweethearts and had this big statewide business for like, almost 50 years, she was broken, beside herself, could barely function, much less run this big business. Yeah. And so my brother has this international company where, anytime like a major league stadium, NFL, major league baseball, soccer gets built with artificial turf, everything that goes on underneath the stadium, his company does that. So his company is huge. They're international. He's got a bunch of kids, super busy. And he was like, I don't have time. I love mom, obviously, but you got to come back home and you got to help me. I can't do all this. I can't run her business and my business. There's no way. And so my wife and I had just bought like a $750,000 house right in Georgetown, put 20% down, still had stuff in boxes. And I was like, all right, let's go back to Texas. And so I was at like my ideal job, the residency director, the fellowship director. And I told myself I have to go back to family and do what's right. And so then I went back, ran the business, took that over for about 3.5 years. And I tell people, it's really the same. Like medicine is blood flowing through, pipes, and plumbing is water flowing through pipes. So I can figure this out, right? And so that worked out really well. And we grew the business. I'm sure you guys, I don't know how it was in Canada up north, but during the pandemic, I hate to say this, but the trade industries exploded because people were stuck at home, right? People were doing remodels, renovations. They were upgrading this and upgrading that. And so the company grew and grew and grew. And as it did that, we got approached by a big publicly traded company that wanted to buy us, and they made an incredible offer. And so we sold. And then I basically was at home. And after 6 months, my wife said, get out of the house, or find, or she said, or find something to do. You're killing me. Right. And so that's how I ended up where I am here. But to answer your question, James, I think that it really was all of those different pivots and all of those struggles where I told myself, look, it took me decades to go through all that. But if I can help someone compress that time into a shorter period, right, and give them some of that experience and wisdom, because there's only so much you can get from reading a book or watching a podcast, right? There's only so much you can get from that. Really, you have to, I think, work with someone who has walked through that before, right? Or a variation of that, and they can kind of help you to uncover and get past it yourself.
Well, I think you're spot on there. And when you're dealing with those types of type A personalities, like you're talking about, that high achiever type mentality, when you're talking about the hours that are spent going through medical school, the fellowship piece, to have somebody stand there and explain that next hill is important for what you're doing right now, but it is not the be all end all. Get the rest of your things in line. As a young person coming through and experience that, there's a maturity that all too often is lacked in that type of mentality. And to have somebody available to be able to touch base with that, that means the world and could potentially be marriage saving, life saving, or all of these things that go along with that. So how are you reaching out and touching base with individuals and kind of bringing them into your model?
Yeah, I think really, and you said it like beautifully. I think really what it was is you're absolutely right. As you go, it doesn't matter if it's professional, right, school, or if it's the trades or whatever it is. But as we're going through this training, they're giving you knowledge, but they're not teaching you, okay, you're a doctor or you're a lawyer or you're a technician, whatever you are. They're not teaching you, okay, just because you're a doctor, you still have a life outside of work. How do you fit medicine into that life, right? That's where they need to teach people. They don't teach you any of that stuff, no matter what profession you're in. And so what I do now is most of my pipeline or most of my inbound comes from LinkedIn primarily. But in the last probably 2 or 3 months, I got back into public speaking again. So obviously when I was still a professor and still, touring as a surgeon, I talked at conferences and lectured all over. But I gave that up. And so lately, I personally don't think there's any better way to build trust, rapport, and a client basis quickly and more genuinely than in person, right? So I think a lot of people miss out on that now because everything's virtual, but I'm getting back out there. I'm traveling, I'm speaking, talking to different companies about finding their purpose, about, training, leadership, and things like that. And so because of that, that has really helped me to, find clientele that way.
It's funny
For
you
sure.
say that because I was talking, sorry, Pat.
We're talking over each other tonight, apparently. When
Yeah.
you're dealing with that, again, that level of expertise where you come from and you have the professional background, you've shown that you have the diligence of sticking with something and seeing it to its fruition. And when you walk into an industry, whatever you want to walk into, and say, listen, I've been there, I've been at the peak. It's not everything that you want to bring it home to. And sometimes you got to go home and you got to fix what's going on in your life. You were talking about your father. And obviously, I'm very sorry that your father passed away, but you make a massive sacrifice in your professional life and in your personal life after purchasing a home, and you pack up and you head back to Texas. There's a lot that can be said about a man in that type of situation. It's easy to run. It's easy to hide from those commitments. What does it feel like when you pack up and you leave and you head home to be able to support the people that always supported you?
Yeah, it was the best feeling ever. I mean, honestly, I was raised very humbly. Before my dad's company took off, I was raised on a working ranch with animals. I'd get up in the morning and feed cattle and fix fences before going to work in blue jeans. And, I did that until I was in my, mid-teens. And then dad's company took off. And we basically went from living on a ranch to living in the country club next to George Strait and Tim Duncan and David Robinson. So it was a big switch, right? And it was always these humble roots. And so I think that, I remember just every morning sitting with my dad, and as soon as the sun started coming up, we'd stop working and he'd sit me and my brother down on the tailgate of the truck and he'd share some kind of a life lesson or some kind of piece of wisdom, and I was very lucky growing up that I had parents that were both there and that taught me things I think that a lot of people miss out on today. And my dad was always my mentor and my best friend. And I mean, anything I needed in life, not monetarily, but any time at all. I mean, I called my dad every day, even up until, when I was in my late 30s on the way home from work, I'd call him every single day just to share my day with him. And, when he was struggling, I was there for him. And when he passed, it was time to go home and take care of mom. And so for me, it was probably the greatest thing I could ever have done in my life. And now I live right down the road from my mom, like less than 2 miles away from mom. And it's awesome. I mean, she has me come over and change light bulbs, right? So
Yeah, no, I think that's a testament to who you are. I think it's wonderful. But Pat and I both had strong dads as well. And the kind of dad that we were both raised by dads, basically. Like my mom was a nurse. She was back then she was doing 12-hour shifts. I didn't get to see her very much. When I did see her, she was lovely. But so my dad was there for me all the time. And it was great to have, when I got home, there was someone there that I could tell my day, get some advice. And I think, like you said, we're missing that now. We really are losing that now. And I think that's part of the problem we're having with these people who are like 18 to 21, 22, they don't know how to deal with adversity. They don't know how to deal with anxiety. They don't know how to deal with stress because they can't call their dad, or they can't call, because I would just call my dad and go, hey, this is what I'm going through. What the hell do I do? And he would help me, but he'd help me in such a way of guiding, not in a way of answering. And it's a very interesting thing.
Yes,
well, that goes to coaching, like those father conversations, right? And again, sorry, Bryan, as you're jumping in there, but those father moments, those coaching opportunities, when they pop in, they're life changing. And you get someone with a little bit of maturity and explaining that mountain is not unobtainable, but do you want the view at the top, right? So, and it sounds like your father was that for you, and always a supporter. And you were talking earlier a little bit about your track and your education, and how was your father pivotal in getting you started in that sort of thing? And I know he was upset that you ran track and wasn't a baseball kid. We all can't be perfect, right?
Right. No, he was super supportive. So I think it was, my brother was a phenomenal athlete. I mean, he excelled at any sport where there was a ball involved. So tennis, basketball, baseball, he was phenomenal. And for me, anything where there was a ball involved, I didn't want stuff flying at my face at 100 miles an hour, right? So I will never forget the first day I went out for football. The coach was like, man, you are just ridiculously fast, but if you drop another football, I'm going to lose it. So why don't you come back tomorrow when we have track practice, and we'll talk then, And so my dad was, he gave me a hard time, just more teasing really than anything else, but he was so supportive, just like my mom was. I mean, it was, I don't think I ever rode the school bus. There was always one of them there at every single meet. I mean, they were picking me up from practice. They were taking me and my friends after practice to go grab cheeseburgers. It was always that presence was always there. And it was exactly like James said. It was my dad. When I was younger, maybe he gave me some answers when I was a young kid. But by the time I was maybe 12 or 13 years old, there was no more giving you, the answer. It was, I'm gonna pull it out of you, and you're gonna figure it out. And if you make the wrong choice, well, okay, let's live that, and let's see what went wrong, and let's figure it out. But it was a totally coachable moment, like all throughout my teenage years. And I think that when you're in the middle of it, you appreciate it. But I'll tell you what, I had that same moment that you guys probably did too, where I was, 15 to 19, and I thought my parents knew nothing. And then by the time I turned like 25 years old, I realized, wow, they were geniuses. And there was probably so much more I could have learned that I just didn't want to listen to,
Nope.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would directly try to help me out. And I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. My daughter's doing it to me right now. I just had a phone call. Very similar that, you don't understand the world. I'm like, I'm 53. I think I might understand something, honey. She's like, no, you don't get it. You're just out of date. I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Exactly.
No, but the great thing about my dad is that, I'd go to him and go, I fucked up. He's like, okay, you fucked up. So have you owned it? Have you gone to the people that you screwed up with, and you've owned it? You've said to them, I messed up. This is how I messed up, and this is how I'm going to fix it. That's how you solve that problem, because that problem will go away as long as you have ownership of it. If you pretend it does not exist, then it gets bigger, faster, and worse, because eventually they're going to find out and they're going to come at you.
Yeah. And I really think that honestly, for me, is where it's funny you mentioned that. I think that really is where we go from being like a child or a kid to an adult, is with accountability and responsibility. I remember one time, when I was, I don't even know how old I was. We went, it was a bunch of kids at a slumber party, and we went and we were going to go, toilet paper and just, do, silly kid stuff at one of the girls' houses, right? Because there was a slumber party over there. And it was one of those rare nights. I mean, you can't make this up. It was one of those rare nights in Texas where it was freezing outside. Okay. Like cold, little bit of snow. And we had made water balloons and all this stuff. Well, silly me grabs a water balloon and chunks it at the house. Water balloon is frozen solid, right? But we're all, we're going, we didn't even realize what we're doing. Of course, my water balloon hits the glass right on the garage door, goes right through the garage door, right through the back window of their car, and just shatters it out. And so we finish what we're doing because we think we're going to get away with this. And I get home, and my dad had already heard about it, right? I mean, we were busted like right away. And we tried to all play stupid and act like we didn't know what happened. And within about, I don't know, 90 seconds, my dad was like, you're either going to tell me what you did, but I really don't care, but you're going to go tell them for sure what happened. You're going to go tell her parents. And I don't really care if I know the truth, but they're going to find out the truth or we're going to have a problem. You know what I mean? And so I owned it, and I learned a lot in that moment. And, you know, I did some work for them around the house and made it right. And I'll tell you what, I don't throw frozen water balloons anymore.
Well, for that, I'm glad, because we were concerned. The cold snaps in Texas these days are
so, you guys are safe, I promise.
That's it.
Yeah, there's a lot of glass windows where we're going to. So
yes,
I don't know if we should have a water fight. We'll ask Sia what you think. So do you think, so going back to your dad and the way he coached you, how is that? Because I always feel my dad is in everything I do. I see him, like the way I sit sometimes, the way I move, the way I respond to things. How do you think that's influenced? Let's get back to your coaching, that what you do for a living. How does it influence your coaching? Do you see your dad and what you're doing a bit?
For sure. Yeah, I think my mannerisms definitely. I mean, I have people tell me all the time that even Raquel, who I think is here, will tell me, like, when she sees a picture of my dad, like the resemblance is so, and it means a lot to me, right? So my brother didn't get the mannerisms and like the physical appearance of my dad, and I definitely did. But so much of his mannerisms for sure. So I catch myself. My dad was very, very good at holding you accountable and supporting you. But gosh, would he challenge you like crazy, right? And so I see myself, like, as a coach, I really think a good coach supports, challenges, stretches, and holds you accountable, right? I think it's like really those four things. And I definitely have a lot of clients that I work with that every now and then, I mean, it's, you know, it's, they invested in what they are doing, right? Which is the best decision I think people can make. But sometimes I have to call them out on their lack of commitment, their lack of hard work. And honestly, it's not me calling them out because they're doing anything wrong. It's me calling them out because I know there's more there, right? Like, I've seen the other side and I've been through it. And so it's getting them to realize, like, don't settle, right? Like when someone tells you this is the best ever, I've tried everything, right? No one has ever tried everything. That makes my blood boil, right? It's like it's never, the problem is never resources, it's resourcefulness, right? So when someone says, oh my gosh, I can't do it anymore, I've tried everything, I'm like, well, that's incredible that you tried everything, because I've been around a long time and I've only tried about much, right? Yeah. And so, yeah, so I definitely see a lot of him there, but also my dad had this fantastic sense of humor and wit that he could just diffuse a situation. So my dad had this ability where he could give you some grief and give you some real stern, right? But then make this just incredibly witty remark afterwards. And it's almost like a great speaker that can use that pause really well, like a John C. Maxwell. Yeah. So my dad would hit you with some real something and then just a perfectly placed little wit or humor afterwards. And you'd be like, what? Okay, I'll do it. You know what I mean? Like, it was perfect. And so he'd bring you in and then he'd just calm you down. So I definitely do that.
Yeah, there's a real power to delivering shit when you need to.
Big
right time. And being able to use that little bit of levity at the end brings that around where it's not, I'm enforcing something, I'm making it your idea. We can walk away from this. I've told you, but we can walk away from this and we can have a smile on our face and we can work on this as a team together. And the coaching thing I love. And obviously, you know, you went through the medical professional and now you're doing the coaching. What does your ideal client look like? What does somebody who's coming to Dr. Sagray look like for your ideal client? Obviously, there's going to be lots of people that fit this and then don't fit this. But if you're picturing your ideal client, what's that look like?
You know, honestly, I really think it's like a lot of times, and I know I may have said this already, but it really is like a past version of you. But what it really is that I see most of the time is it's someone who is coming to me, and it's not always, but usually it's someone who is like a high performer, but they are not fulfilled. And so I talk a lot about how you can have all the success in the world, but if you don't have any fulfillment, right, then it's like the ultimate failure. And so right. I think what I end up seeing a lot with my clients are people who are, you know, business owners, they're professionals. I have a guy that I work with who was in, you know, federal prison and is like completely recovered now. The guy's phenomenal, totally changed his life around, has a family, kids, coaches a little league team, has a house, and 10 years
Hang on a
ago.
second, hang on a second. So you're dealing with professionals on this level, and then you're doing like God's work here, touching some hearts and dealing with some people that have had some dark places in their life.
Yeah.
How do you come across the two spectrum, and how do you deal with them separately, or do you deal with them separately?
Yeah, for me, I think I just see people, everybody to me really is the same. They're all, I mean, at the end of the day, I think that almost every problem that I deal with, or really that any of us go through, goes back to the 4-letter word fear, I really think. I mean, it's all, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good looking enough. I'm going to say the wrong thing. They're going to think I'm stupid. I don't make enough money. I don't have a nice car, right? It's all like this feeling of inadequacy or feeling of fear. And so I think that, if you come from this servant type place, then a lot of people fit that criteria. And yeah, this guy reached out to me, and he's one of the most incredible people that I've connected with, and he just has a phenomenal story. And 10 years ago, he's in Inglewood, Colorado, at a federal supermax facility, and now he's just this totally reformed guy, and you would never even know it. And I've been, it's incredible. I mean, it's really doing a lot of, I hate to say it, but just good work that gets me fired up.
Well, it sounds like you're talking a lot about the difference between kind of success and that mountain that is success, and then what fulfills you. And there was somebody in the comments here that might have brought those exact terminology up, is that fulfillment piece in regards to feeling like what you've done and accomplished today is great, is fantastic. I feel joy from that, as opposed to just punching the clock.
Yes. Yeah. So that's beautiful. So I'm glad you said joy. So I think one of the big things that I push, and I talk about this a lot, is I think that most people in life, they want to be happy, and you can use whatever word you want, but my definition of happy, because I spent a lot of time being happy, trying to be happy. And I think that happiness for me is externally driven. And I think that happiness is really the dopamine. It's chasing something, whether it's cars, women, drugs, money, the next mountain, vacations, whatever it is. For me, those are quick little feelings that you get of pleasure. That's happiness. And for me, joy is this thing that is internally driven, that you can tap into anytime, anywhere. And it sort of is, it's able to manifest itself regardless of your external environment, right? And so when I came to this realization that no matter what was going on externally, I could still have joy and be content and be happy where I was, be joyful where I was while I pursued what I wanted. That was a big game changer for me, because I used to think that happiness was kind of what society defined it as, right? Like, the white picket fence and the house and the this and the 2.5 kids and the vacation home. And then you realize that if you don't continually get more things, you're not going to stay happy. But as soon as you realize that it comes from in here.
Do you have to hit that before you get there, though? So I think of myself. So I just turned 37 years old, right? Financially, I'm very set, very stable. Kind of, if I walked away for the rest of my life, I feel very set and stable. That's rare in my age group. The joy, though, from being able to say that is, what have I sacrificed? I'm not married. I have a daughter, right? I'm full-time. She's the light of my world. I do all these sorts of things. But there's it's kind of the hierarchy of needs when you go to like Maslow, like the psychologically speaking, is that do you have to get to some level of like actualization before you can pivot and go, none of that shit meant nothing. I got to find joy now.
I think there's several ways you can get there. I think you can get there by either hitting like a high point, or you can get there by hitting a low point. I think it can be like opposite ends of the spectrum. So I think that people can maybe chase something and it throws them off their path. Maybe it's alcohol, maybe it's drugs. They go down a path, right? And then they hit rock bottom and have an epiphany that all those things they were chasing really meant nothing. I think you can go the other way and have this massive success. I mean, I'm like you in the sense that, I'll be 41 in November, and with medicine and selling the business and what I do now, I mean, I'm fortunate, very fortunate. But at the same time, I look at, and it gives me this sense of, now I can finally instead of just donating whatever money, I can donate my time, you know what I mean? And I can actually use my ability through what I've been through, my struggle, to impact and to add value and significance to someone else. Because I think the more that we make things about us, right, like about our success, about me, it's to impress people. But the more we make it about them, then the more impact there really is, you know? And so I think that that's where, when I was younger, it was all about me. And as I've gotten older, that's what really has actually changed my business and my career too. Anyone out here that's in sales of any kind, which I will tell you, everything you do is in sales. And if you don't believe me, a close friend of mine, when I was still a surgeon, a good buddy of mine said, "You don't think you're in sales?" I said, "No, dude, I'm a surgeon." He goes, "Okay, you're the ultimate salesperson." I said, "How's that?" He goes, "You put people asleep under anesthesia and you assault them with a knife while they're completely unconscious. That is the ultimate sale right there, right? To get that
And they're
confidence
paying
from
you to
people.
do it.
And they're
Yeah.
paying me to do it. So for anyone out there that is in any sort of profession at all, the minute that you are able to, and not fake it, but truly understand that everything that you do is about the value that you have and the skills or whatever it is that you have, but you're giving it to someone else. As soon as you shift to that mindset and you detach from the outcome of your sale, your client, your commission, and you literally make it about giving them the value, you will close more deals than you ever have before, right? As soon as you get away from that mentality. So I think for me, that's where it really shifted. And I think it can be both ends of the spectrum, Patrick. It can be they hit the high or they hit rock bottom.
It totally can be that. Like, so I had a big success. I suffered from depression. I was overweight. I was going nowhere with my life a little bit. I was doing all right as a father. I was a good father. I'm proud of that. Not a great husband. And so I made the choice to lose weight, and I was super successful. In under a year, I lost 152 pounds on a keto diet. I started working out, but there I was standing on the other side, a skinnier man, and I still was unhappy. I was still depressed. I still hated my life. I still was not doing what I like to do. I still had no drive, no goals. And that was my biggest eye opener. I'm like, wait a second. I'm gorgeous. I look really nice. I'm good looking. I thought that's what I needed to fix. That was what my only problem was, is that I was fat and ugly. And then once I found that out, then I had to go, okay, and now I got to figure out there's a lot more. This is a lot more complicated. And I need to sit back and I need to really examine all my parts. And so I did that. And a lot of it for me was my self-talk. It was, I was limiting myself before I even started. You know, it was always, I can't do this. You know, I couldn't go skydiving. Well, I'm too big to go skydiving, or whatever it was. I would stop myself from doing it before I even tried. Starting a podcast, you know, well, no one's going to want to hear what I want to hear, what I say, you know, but now I think it, I dream it, and I do it because I know that I can do it. And, you know, it's like that famous quote, if you think you can't, you're right. And if you think you can, you're right. Right.
Henry Ford. Yeah. I mean, I think that that's spot on, because you really hit that inflection point, right? Where you got to that hill and you thought it was going to be, you know, the leprechaun and the big pot of gold. And then you realized, oh, snap, I'm not only where I was before, but I'm worse off because I wasted I wasted all this time, all this effort, shed all this weight, and now I still feel like a schmo, right? I haven't really moved the ball forward at all. And I think that when you realize that, then that's when most people, and people can do it on their own, right? They really can, but that's when you have to go inward. And I think that really is where the real work has to be done. And whether you do it on your own or whether someone walks along with you, I'll tell you, if they walk along with you, it's a lot shorter. I mean, I'm sitting here telling you guys this, but I'm a product of my product. I mean, I've had a coach forever. I still have a coach. If you have a coach and they don't have a coach, ding, 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 something, just be careful, okay? Because no one, right, we're always all learning. And so I would say that, you hit it spot on. And then when you really evaluated what it takes for you to truly be who you wanted to be, right, and find that confidence, find that inner whatever, look at you now, podcast, right? Like you have all those things that you thought you couldn't do. And it took you doing something that you thought was going to fix it and then still failing again.
Yes.
And that is what really made you go, now I really have to figure my shit out now, because now there's really more going on. And I think that is what had you go inward and really find out what and who James was, you know?
Well, I can attest for this guy. I've kind of kept an eye on this lad for a while. I've known him for a while, that, you know, he was in a dark place when he first kind of started this journey. And then you kind of look at where he is today and that little bit of swagger that he walked. Look at him. Fine. He looks over there. He's cleaning up okay. He's got a bit of that swagger back, and the chances and the risks. I think, Bryan, that's the big thing that I've noticed with James, is that ability now to be able to be a little bit more secure in himself, that he's willing to take that jump, take that leap, and the kind of the fuck it factor. Like, I'm going to go, I'm going to do it, I'm going to make it happen, and it doesn't matter. And that's something that, again, James and I have been friends for a number of years, and watching that dynamic, watching that change. And we're still working on him. He's still work in progress. I'm not blowing him up here tonight. You'd never get his head on the plane here in a couple weeks to get down to see you folks. But
that's true.
He's doing all right. We're getting him there.
Yeah. We're working on my courage, and we're working on Pat's heart. We're like Wizard of Oz. We need
exactly.
Dorothy.
You've got
Sia's Dorothy.
Yeah.
Hey,
well,
Sia.
Sia's Dorothy. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a good contrast, and you guys play off each other nice. But you know, you talked about courage, and you know, I'm a skydiver. My uncle is captain of the U.S. aerobatic team, 9-time world champion aerobatic pilot. So I've been jumping out of planes, you know, for a long time. And I think one of the cool things is people have this conception, right, or this idea that courage and confidence is being fearless, right? But in my opinion, when you're fearless, you make uncalculated risks that end up really, really bad. So we all need an underlying level of fear, because if you have a little underlying baseline of fear, that is actually what motivates you to take action and to get up off your butt and to do something, right? So if you're fearless, I don't want to associate with you, because you're probably going to be doing wacky stuff. You're probably the guy that's jumping with no reserve chute, okay? And I'm not playing around with that. So confidence and courage is the ability to act despite fear, right? And so it really means that you're willing to fail in front of a bunch of people that you don't know. And that takes confidence, it takes heart, it takes courage. And I think that for me was really the hardest thing, honestly, in life to learn, and something that I think is really a lifelong pursuit for all of us is that self-discipline, self-confidence, self-awareness. And I think really so many people, you know, I see it all the time on social media, people talking about overcoming fear and getting past fear and getting over your fear. And I'm like, these people just have no clue. They don't live in the real world. You don't get over fear, you get beyond it or around it. It's going to be there around the next corner, my friend. It doesn't go away.
Yeah, fear always
learn how to deal with it.
Where your education ends, like your experience in education. It's just that other side. And I watch the markets every day. I day trade and I manage portfolios. I have a real estate portfolio as well. And the biggest hesitation when you're about to make that trade is, what if I'm wrong? What if this sucks the other way as soon as I do it? And what it is that it takes 100 of those situations for it to fulfill exactly what you're thinking is going to be the negative before you go, I need to do my homework more. I need to be more educated. I need to be ready for a position to move on me. I need to be ready for this deal to potentially fall apart in a real estate transaction. And this is where it sounds like, Bryan, with what you're doing with LinkedIn, it sounds like you're taking these people that are at that precipice of jumping into the next phase, into that career, into that business. And LinkedIn is this perfect networking opportunity for you. Obviously, you're providing great content. You're providing a fantastic maturity. And I think that's what this comes down to, is that coaching, is that maturity of, hey, look before we leap. Let's get a little bit more educated. Let's get a little bit more rounded up before we take that step. And then I'm going to be here to help you jump.
I hope my wife is watching this, you know, listen to you talk about me being mature. No, but I really, I'm teasing, but she loves me, but I really, over here. She's laughing over here. Actually,
a little bit of truth, a little bit of teasing.
Yes. You guys will get to meet her, and you'll actually see that and everyone on LinkedIn talks about how they love her. I'm just like the one you have to deal with, but it's totally true, Patrick. I mean, I think that, and what you mentioned about day trading and your portfolio is so true, where it is the how do you say, it's the it's the deals that you've lost. It's the clients who have trusted you with whatever, and things have gone south, right? And that happens to everybody. But when that happens, if you make the same decision again, right? Or if you just lay down and let the truck back over you, then just get over it already, right? So that is one of the best things. Nietzsche talks about this, and he talks about how one of the best ways to get beyond fear is to get over yourself, right? Like like you need a little bit of ego, just like you need a little bit of fear, but you have to get over yourself and realize that you're not as important as you think you are. People don't think about you as much as you think they do, right? So if you're worried that this girl or this guy is going to be like, oh my God, here Bryan goes again, he's effing up again. Well, guess what? This guy doesn't give a shit. This guy's worried about what he's doing. He doesn't care what I'm doing, right? And so for me and for clients, that's something that I work on a lot. Is people are coming to me because they want to work on themselves, but at the same time, you have to get over yourselves and just not take it all so serious, and be present, like right here, right? Like right now, because what happened over there or what's going to happen tomorrow, that shit, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I mean, I hope when I wake up, the sun comes up. I sure hope it does, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. So one of the first things I had to overcome when I was starting to do stuff, starting to get out there. So one of the things I did is I was going to work out at Trent University locally here, and I walked into the building and I felt every eye upon me. I don't know how to work out. I was a big fat man. I don't know how to lift a weight. So I walked in, I was watching, and you feel like every eye is judging you. Every time you touch a weight, oh, look, he's got the wimpy right. Oh, look, he's turning his wrists the wrong way. And the whole time this dialogue's running in my head and you can't shut it off. But if you take a breath and you sit down and you look around, there's not one eye on you. No one gives a shit that you're even in the room. But in your head, you think they're like, oh, he's wearing the wrong shorts. He's lifting the weight. No one cares that you exist. You're not that important to the world. And that was a huge lesson for me. It helped me when I went and did volleyball. It helped me when I started. Joined this club at Runner's Life. I didn't know how to run when I joined the club. All these guys, I walk in, they're telling me stories about how they're running 50K, and one guy was doing 100K, and they're traveling all over the world. And I'm like, well, I kind of can do 1K,
Yes.
And terrified, thinking all the people in the room are judging me, and they're like, oh no, you'll be running in no time. Don't worry about it. Everyone in the room was telling me like, no, just come every week.
Right.
And they were right. In 2 months, I was running 5. In 4 months, I was running 10. I'm about to run my first marathon in under a year. Like,
it's amazing. Which one are you running?
I'm doing Toronto.
Awesome.
Toronto TSC.
I run Toronto.
TCS. Oh, do you?
So when I was in, me.
Hang on. Stop for a second. Did you see James' face? Like, he just found his best friend. Like, I don't know if any of you noticed that. He was just like, a runner? Oh my God.
I mean, that was my life for like forever. So me and one of my buddies that I went to college with, we had set out to run 50 marathons and 50 weekends in 50 states. And we did 34 of them and ran out of money, spent all of our money on beer and booze and pizza like stupid idiots. And we ran out of money, and my dad said, I don't care. Get your ass home. Figure it out. Right.
Find out. You're the one who got you there.
I love your dad. It was a blast. But you know what I found out too is so funny is that feeling you get in the gym when everyone's watching you, or when you're in the running class and you feel like everyone's watching you. What I've noticed is so if you look around and you pay really good attention, I'm not telling people to do this because block out the naysayers. But if you really do like to look around, because I love to people watch, there will be one person that's watching you, and the one person that's watching you is the person just like you that has no idea what the fuck they're doing. And they're watching you because they're like, look at this idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing. This guy's my friend right here, right? And the people that know what they're doing, the guy that's deadlifting like 600 pounds, he doesn't care about James.
Nope.
The only people that are watching you are the ones that are like, oh my God, this guy's got, he's got on dress shoes and he's at the gym. What the heck's he doing? And so that's what I realized. And so those actually now in my life, when I go somewhere, the people that are like paying attention, those are the ones that I go up to right away, because it's like, that's the one that I'm going to have the connection with, because they're probably kind of where you are. But I just wanted to mention that. But I learned that a long time ago that no one is probably paying attention. And if you catch someone that's really watching what you're doing, it's probably because they have no clue what they're doing either. So go make friends with that person.
And it's very true. Like at Runner's Life, the club I'm at, when I can always tell, because I don't know all the runners, because maybe you guys don't know about so running clubs, people come and go. You might not see them for a year. You might see them all the time. It just depends. So every once in a while, there's a new person. And you can tell the new person who's been there a long time and is a lifer just walks in the room, grabs a drink, owns the place. And the other one stands in the corner and just stares. And that's always the one that I go up to and go, hey, how's it going? Come on in.
Yes.
Because that's what happened to me. I walked into the roar, I found a corner, and I just stood there like, what do I do in this room? And if a young lady didn't walk up to me and say, hi, who are you? Like, why are you here? This is awesome. This is great. You're great. And then, set me up with, so you run this fast, you can only run a kilometer. You're going to be with Bill, John, and Sam. And, they're perfect for you. Just, do what they do, go where they go, and you'll be fine. And it. Pat, runners, we all are brothers. I went to Portugal. Porto, Portugal. I Instagrammed the running group there, and they had me run with them. And I showed up. We ran, we laughed, we had breakfast together. I never met them before. We still every once in a while message each other.
Yeah, we're a sick breed. I'll tell you that. I mean, honestly though, I will say like skiers though I think each, and football, Pat, like you talked about, I think each sport kind of has I don't want to stereotype, whatever you want to call it. Like stereotypes are stereotypes because some of it is true. I'm sorry to say it, people. I'm sorry to tell you guys. I'm sorry to burst the bubble and say that stereotypes aren't just, oh my God, they're this bad thing. They're stereotypes because some of it is totally true, right? And I will say there is some clicks within running, but it's been a big part of my life. And you're totally right. I think that a lot of people talk about, lifting other people up, right? And everyone rises together. And I really think that it goes beyond that. And you mentioned it with the people that, James, that helped you when you first came in. Oh. And what I think is important is not just to lift people up, but to lift them up. And once you lift them up, to put them in the right place. You know what I mean? Because it's not enough to just lift somebody up. Because if you lift somebody up to your level and you give them that voice, but they have no idea what they're doing, you're going to do them a bigger disservice than if you had just left them where they were, because now you're going to lift them up in front of a bunch of people and they're going to squander and blow it. And so sometimes I really think the most important thing is to lift people up and know how to put them in the right spot. Doesn't mean you put them there and you leave them there. It just means that when you lift them up, don't just lift them up and then walk away, right? You have to know where to place them. And so I think when you mentioned that about running, it really reminded me of that.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. You have to, so to be a good coach, I feel like even if you're coaching a team, if you're like, so I did a lot of work with children who have autism. I believe you call them neurodivergent anymore, but I'm old school. I call autism. I don't know why they changed names. It doesn't matter. But I had to really, in order to help them talk, help them socialize or whatever it was, I had to learn who they were first. I couldn't walk in and go, I know the answers. If I have a picture card, if I have a picture schedule, it's going to work. It's going to be great. No, I have to understand what they like, what they dislike. And I would imagine it's the same in coaching. You really have to know that person so that you can fit them in the square peg with the square hole, Yep.
Yeah, it's totally true. I think that, and that's why I think with coaching, I think the most success people have with their clients really is someone who has been in that position before, right? And I know I keep going back to that, but it's so crucial. Like, and I'm not saying this to, upset or offend anybody, but I kind of like to do that because it's fun to get people riled up. And I know Patrick likes to, I can tell already. And James does too. I think here's the thing, right? Like, I'm all for credentials, right? Obviously, I spent a lot of money and a lot of time to get all those letters after my name. But at the same time, it doesn't matter what is after your name if you don't have the experience, right? Because knowledge and wisdom are two different things. And the only way you get from knowledge or from what you learn in books to wisdom is with experience. You don't, you can, I don't care how much you read. I don't care about any of that. If you haven't done a little bit, means nothing to me, right? And so the point I think I'm trying to make is The difference is that when you really can kind of cross that chasm and you really can help people to understand that it is those experiences. And that's why I think it comes back to a past version of yourself in some way. You were speaking about autism, learning, you know, to understand where they are, where they're coming from, what their struggles are, what their challenges are. And even if you haven't walked that before, even if you don't have a child that's autistic, right? What's a way that you can get experience doing that? Volunteer at somewhere where they work with autistic people. Get out into the community and work with autistic children. Be around that environment, right? And get the experiences, at least from an observational standpoint, so that you can speak to that. I don't care how many books you read about autism. If you've never been around autistic people, you can't coach an autistic person, period. Right.
That's
So
right.
for me, it's like I coach a lot of clients. I'm on a board of advisors at a mental health, a brotherhood where we started in May, and we have over 3,500 members now in every continent, but Antarctica. And so
Wow.
we're growing this.
Dr. Sagray working on Antarctica. She's Antarctica, I tell you.
I'm trying. That's the only one I can't get yet. And so we're the Penguins. They just won't pick up my phone call. So we're growing this thing like crazy. And what we're finding is, you know, when I was struggling with mental burnout, you know, and I literally, when we were living in Virginia, I walked into the woods. I mean, it's hard for me to talk about with a pistol, right? And that was it. I was done. And I'll never forget walking out there and seeing a family playing soccer, or what some countries call football, right? But we call it soccer. And they're playing soccer. And I saw a dad with two daughters, his son and his wife. And right at that moment, I'll never forget it, I heard my dad's voice. And my dad was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "My time is already over. You have so much left. Like, what are you thinking?" And like, I snapped right then, right? And I turned around and went home. And so mental health, a really close friend of mine, and what got me into that when I was 12 years old, I went to pick up a friend of mine to go to the ranch. I walked into this friend of mine's house to go pick him up to go to the ranch. His mom goes, "Go upstairs and grab him." I ran upstairs. He had hung himself over the door with his karate belt. I was the first person to walk into the room. Wow. So this has been really big for me for a long time. Lost a lot of physician friends. As you guys know, suicide in healthcare is really high right now. Yeah. My fellowship director shot himself in the head in his office at the hospital, right? So this has been a constant thing that I've dealt with in my life. And so can I coach people through mental health? You damn straight I can, because I've been there before. I've struggled and I got to the other side of it. Do I have any certifications or anything like that? No, I don't. But you know what? I don't need them because I got on the job training. And so that's one of the things where I think it's really important. And I say this because as a surgeon, I talk about second opinions. I don't care if somebody works with me or if they work with another coach. Whoever you work with, don't just look for what's after their name. Make sure that they've done what you're trying to do, or that they've struggled with what you're trying to overcome, right? That's the key.
Yeah, no, I think it's super important to understand the experience you're going through in a way, a life way, for sure. I'm sorry that you've gone through all that. Those are tough things to go through. Suicide is, for some reason, seems like an easy way out. I've been there myself, where not with a gun, but I've been there myself, waiting to make that decision. And for me, I was in a room and a stranger walked into it. I was at a party. I was all by myself. I was about to take a bunch of pills, and this stranger just walked in and said, "Just sat down," and started talking to me out of nowhere. And personally, for me, I felt it was God. You know, God sent that person in to stop.
He did,
to stop me, because I had more to do. And you know, I've never forgotten that moment. So I literally, if I see someone on the street that looks sad, I'll you know, say something to them. I'll say hi. I stop and talk to homeless people. I will tell someone at my work, even though they look happy, because those are the people that will should be on their way to go kill themselves. And like, it's wild. They look the happiest.
They do, and that's like the duck on the pond. And I think that's why it's so important for anyone who's ever, you know, known someone who's been in a recovery program for any sort of addiction, or has been in one themselves. You know that when you're an addict, right? No one wants to be an addict. It doesn't matter what your addiction is. No. You isolate yourself because you are ashamed of what you do. So one of the biggest ways to overcome addiction is connection, social interaction. It's community, right? There's all these studies coming out now after isolation from the pandemic, putting on those fucking masks over people's faces for 4 years and taking their identity away, trying to make us all into this big herd mentality, right? It's BS. And so what happened was they took away people's identities, they socially isolated them. Depression, suicide, alcohol abuse are at all-time highs in the world right now, right? So great job, everybody. Thanks for that. And so what happened is we need that social interaction, like you mentioned, right? And so when that person came in, you were isolating yourself because you wanted to be alone because you felt ashamed. But when that person came in and provided you the one thing that you really, really needed, that was enough to get that inflection point. And so I see that a lot in a coach too, where not from the same degree of severity, but maybe Patrick like doesn't know, does he want to continue with real estate and portfolio investing? Right. Or maybe he wants to open up his own ski resort and just have it where I'm the only one that gets to come whenever I want. And the mountains are perfectly groomed and the moguls are perfect. No, I'm kidding. But whatever this point is, like these
set
people
that up,
have
Pat,
these,
right away.
Exactly. But these people may have these, they're stuck on something, or they don't know how to make that next decision. And so what they do is they go inward, right? And they isolate in some form or fashion. And so a lot of times what a coach does is they provide that accountability, that connection, and that sort of that like you, James, that piece that's missing. And oftentimes that piece that's missing is interaction. It's community.
100%. Yeah, we've had a special kind of a special series when we first started this channel, and it was a lot of the individuals that we talked with were victims of sexual abuse. A lot of them ended up in situations in which addiction was the major focus of their life. We're not talking like a short period of time, like we're talking for the majority of their adulthood. And we focused on the success stories, and we really wanted to shine light on, okay, this was your trauma, this was what you were doing to cope, but now where you are now. Some of them opened treatment centers, some of them were doing advocacy street work, like reaching out into these really dark places. And we did a special, we did a live studio audience, or a live studio session with 4 survivors, and it's worth going back in our history and checking it out. And a couple guys from Canada, like, we don't know about this. Like it was really an interesting experience for myself, who had never really, I think everyone has some level of mental health, but I had never really ran headlong into it. And also dealing with someone, like having that interaction and them telling their story, and that deep compassion just floods you. And it's there's we talked with a lot of them about the difference between empathy and compassion. and there's a vast difference. And you talked about that companionship, to be able to support. And first of all, I want to say, Bryan, I'm glad that day in the woods that it never came to that, because sir, you wouldn't be here, you wouldn't be doing the beautiful things that you're doing. And James, it's the same thing, pal. Like anyone that's out there that's going through something, to look at these 2 gentlemen where they are today. I got a guy here with the Walking Tall group with Chris, and what he's been putting together. Would you stop hitting it so I can? There you go.
We're fighting over it. I didn't know you were doing it.
That makes me so happy.
I was like, I want to pull up the Walking Tall. This is the perfect opportunity.
This organization that is doing such a fantastic outreach. And Bryan, I know you know Chris, and you've had an opportunity to kind of hear his story. And I think our listeners, our profiteers out there, have been kind of understanding what Walking Tall is and growing. But the understanding that I can coach you in business, I can coach you in sports, I can coach you in life, but knowing that I can get you off that ledge if I need to and help, that's got to be a fantastic feeling. From opening that person up as a salesman, as a surgeon, to being able to open them up, their spirituality, their heart, their human, that's a huge feather in your cap, pal. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I think too, the other thing for people to understand and to realize, and I'm sure Chris would agree with this too, and the guys in the brotherhood that I'm with that, all walk the same road that I did, that are all founders. I think that what's really important is, and I go back to medicine again, where in medicine, if you guys know anybody, I'm sure everyone here knows someone, or maybe directly themselves has had cancer, or knows someone who's been through cancer. And they know that when you have cancer, it's never cured, right? It's in remission. And so I think the most important thing to realize is, no matter what your addiction has ever been, what your struggle has ever been, whether it's suicide, whether it's some kind of a traumatic incident, PTSD, whatever it is, you are beyond where you were before. But I hate to say this, and I can say this with a wholehearted, you are not out of the woods. Okay. This is a lifelong battle
Yes.
that you are going to face. And the minute that you don't understand that and you let your guard down, it will creep back in slowly. And the problem is that you won't see it before someone else will, which is why community connection is so important, why having people around you and not isolating. Because if James starts to fall off or Patrick starts to fall off, I mean, I can self-coach myself, right? Because I've learned how to do that. But there are still times to this day where my wife will say, "You moron." Like, she will call me out before I even recognize it. And then I'll self-coach myself, right? But if I didn't have people around me that cared, or people around me who supported me. And so that's just one thing I want to leave people with, is just know that if you know anyone that's been through these difficult situations, right? And you're like, wow, what a success story. Bryan overcame this and look at where he is now. Yeah, look at where I am now, but it doesn't mean that I can't end up back there again. So I think that's important to understand.
I just had that discussion today about depression. Someone said to me that it's easy to overcome depression with the right exercise and taking care of yourself and seeking counseling. I said, well, no, it's not easy to overcome depression at all. Depression is lifelong.
Yep.
It's forever. Mental health is forever. What you can is mitigate it. You can get yourself a new set of tool bags. And when you start feeling that tightness, that sadness, whatever it is, you can pull out those tools that you learned.
Yep.
And you can use them to get through it easier. So you don't fall as deep, and you don't get, you don't do the things that you were doing before, like doing drugs or having sex randomly or eating food or whatever you do to distract yourself from that pain.
Yep.
You don't do that anymore because you have new tools like running or rock climbing or,
Right.
But you're absolutely right. Socially speaking, Pat knows when I'm not doing okay. I know when Pat's not doing okay.
And I gotta call him out on being a little bitch all the time.
All the time.
Right.
All the time.
All the time.
And he knows that comes from a place of love, but every once in a while I gotta be like, stop being a little bitch.
And what I love is when people tell you not to trade one addiction for another, and I'm like, you know what? Fuck you, because I will trade alcohol and drugs for running and deadlifting any day of the week, right? And so I think you nailed it perfectly spot on. And I don't want to be too long-winded and go too far over for our time or whatever. But I think what's really important to realize is, like you said, it's this lifelong thing. And when you talked about your tools in your toolbox, it reminded me of, a lot of people know James Clear, Atomic Habits, right? And he talks about how in life you rise to the level of your goals, but you fall to the level of your habits or your systems or your routines, right? And so I think what's important is you might have the greatest, grandest achievements that you want to achieve, but you're going to eventually fall to what you do on a day-to-day basis, what your habits are, what you do, what your routines are, what your systems are. And so if you don't have whatever your self-care routine is, right? If it's, I don't know what it is, if it's skeet shooting, if it's skiing, if it's running, if it's eating an extra large pizza every Wednesday, I don't know what it is. But if you don't have those mechanisms in place that you use for self-care, you will fall to the level of whatever your system is, right? And so if your system is self-medicating and isolating, that's going to be where you end up.
Yeah. And that's never good. That's a deep pit that you can't get out of by yourself. You need that extra hand. Well, Dr. Bryan Sagray, I think I said it right. I love that you're here, man. This conversation has been great. I can't wait to meet you in person so we can have more of these conversations, because I really enjoy the way we flow together. The three of us just got along so well. These are all important conversations. I just want to shout out to the Walking Tall group again. I was talking to Chris today, and he feels that it's important everyone realize that Walking Tall is a movement that everyone owns. Chris doesn't own it. The other people who created it don't own it. We all own it. We need to walk tall together. We need to help each other out. And I'm telling you right now, if you are at work and you see someone acting different, it doesn't hurt to walk over and go, "Hey, how's it going? What have you been up to? I did this last night," and just talk to them. You may change their world forever. You may stop them from doing something that you will regret because you didn't take the time to talk to them. Because I'm telling you right now, their behavior will change. It may be that they walk in on the top of their game and they're whistling, and then it's just because they've made the commitment to end it.
Yep.
It's an odd thing, I know, but you make the commitment that you're going to end it. Finally, I know it's going to be over. It's going to be over tonight.
It feels great. Yep.
I feel amazing. I have made a decision. My pain's going away tonight.
Yep.
Take the time to talk to these people. If you notice a huge difference, a huge change, you notice them withdrawing. They stop going to like hockey, or they stop talking, they stop going to the lunchroom. They end up just hanging out, by wherever they're working. Please go talk to them, and let's all walk all together. Bryan, I love what you're doing. Here's his QR code here, Dr. Bryan Sagray. That will get you all of his links, I believe. And I'm telling you right now, I agree with him 100%. We can't do this alone. Get a coach. Get someone who knows what's going on. They have maps already. They know where the pitfalls are. They know where your problems will arise. They will be the mirror that reflects the things that you can't see. It is impossible to see all the things that within yourself. But if you have someone like a coach who can identify them quickly and help you out with it, money can't describe how much that's worth. Anyway, peeps out there, let's heal our minds, bodies, and souls together. Pat?
Yeah, Bryan, it was a pleasure tonight. I'm glad you're here to have this conversation, pal. I very much look forward to San Antonio. We will likely talk a little treason while we're down there and figure out a few things. I love what you're doing. The maturity that it takes to reach out and go to a coach. I can't think of anyone that would be better in what you're doing with the medical past, but also the ability to be able to be very rational and understand where people are coming from in their deepest and darkest. That's a special gift that you have. So we're going to let you have the last line and lead us out. Give us a little something. Well, you as a coach, you probably got some inspirational quotes.
Oh, I would think so.
From me, folks, I want to thank you all for joining us for the Soaring Profits Thursday Night Live. We popped up a couple QR codes here tonight. The Walking Tall, our YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Please get out there and like, subscribe, and share. You folks joining us and checking it out and commenting and subscribing is what gives us the opportunity to do this again next week, the next week, the next week, the next week, the next week. And we can have fantastic guests like Dr. Bryan Sagray. So, Bryan, thank you so much for having tonight, pal. And take us out, buddy.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. Please make sure that you guys continue to like, follow, and subscribe and watch their show. These guys are the real deal, doing the real thing. I look forward to seeing you guys in San Antonio, having some real barbecue. And I just want to let your viewers know that, one of the most important things that you really can do in life is to learn to be present in the moment, because after all, today is the tomorrow that you worried about yesterday. So I hope you guys have a good evening, and we will talk soon, and I will see you guys in a couple weeks.
How do you not